To my live. I'm currently live on YouTube. I'm going to be answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. So let's see what questions you guys have for the chat today. I see some questions are already here. Welcome to all the people joining. How are you guys doing? What's new? What's the 411? Also, for those of you who are interested in either your own natal chart reading or progressed natal chart reading, the information for all of that is going to be in the description box below. You guys go under my website, underneath the readings tab, and then you guys can pick which of the two readings you guys would like. An email window should pop up. If it doesn't pop up, you guys can send me an email directly, and then we'll go from there. Okay, hey Sundog, you said, hey Barbara, is a Placidus system Capricorn first house a fame placement? And what does whole sign second house stellium in Aquarius mean? 0 degrees Neptune, Sun conjunct Uranus, and 29 degrees. Yay, I'm so glad that you love the content. Thank you for being here, for your like, shares, and subscribes. So for fame, I have 2 videos, I believe. I think it's in my miscellaneous playlist where I go over all of the different types of fame placements. Now, in terms of fame, you want to look at everything in a natal chart. Like there's a lot of different factors when it comes to fame. So just looking at Capricorn stellium in the first house, I mean, it's something I'd have to look at your whole natal chart, but Capricorn stellium, what we know about these individuals is they're hardworking, they're resilient, and they're going to do very well on this earth plane. So I find a lot of the time, like Capricorn or like 10th house stellium, like these people tend to become very well known, either in a niche. It could be on the public stage as well, but it depends, it depends on the rest of the natal chart. It depends on the transits. Like there's a lot of factors to look for. So there's that. Now, in terms of your whole sign, second house stellium in Aquarius, and what does that mean? So, I'm curious to know if your second house overall is occupied by Aquarius, because that would give us a little bit more insight as to ways that you can make money, because you can make money through Aquarius types of things if your second house is occupied by Aquarius. Now, having that stellium, second house stellium, now this is in the whole sign system, that stellium basically signifies like you're here to master money is really what that is in this lifetime, like the material plane, getting the wealth, getting the gains, all these types of things, okay? So that is what the second house stellium is all about. The Aquarius energy is you being ahead of your time, being super futuristic, having a lot of great ideas, here to connect the collective and help propel them forward with your mind is really what that is. Now, you're always going to be trendy, you're always going to have like futuristic ideas is really what that is. It can be the way you dress, it can be the way you do your hair, it can be the way you present yourself, it could just be what you see of the collective and where the collective is heading. Like that's that Aquarius stellium energy. Hey everyone, welcome to the chat. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. I'm just going in order. Then Sundog said, what do I think about weak ancestors? I'm not sure. I've never heard about weak ancestors before. He said, can our ancestors be against us if given a lot of karma? And can they be weak, not supportive? Here's the thing. This is how I see everything. It's going to be a little bit more metaphysical, so I hope it makes sense, okay? So in terms of karma, in terms of like ancestors and like generational things and clearing generational things, it travels basically through the family line until it gets to the person that decides to heal that thing, right? So it's going to travel throughout the family. So like, let's say even within your parents, right? Like let's say there was something that they really wanted to do, but it was like an unfulfilled desire for whatever reason. It's going to get to the kids. Now it's going to go in order of the children until it gets to the person that basically transmutes it and decides to do it. And that's the same thing in terms of having children. This is just my own opinion, okay, as of right now, where we're standing in terms of karma and karmic clearance. A lot of the time when people have kids, the kids are basically continuing and clearing the karma for them, okay, is really what that is. So that's how any sort of generational things are being cleared. It travels up until the person that wants to clear it. And then when you clear it and heal it, it basically energetically, and this is metaphysically, okay? So metaphysically, the way that it's taking place is as if it's never happened, okay? I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit more metaphysical and it's a little bit more out there, I guess you can say, right, in terms of the concept, but that's kind of how it works. So it's like when people heal things and when people clear things, you're clearing it for the whole family line. And basically the way that time works, like in this current dimension, it's linear, yes, but when you look at it from the higher perspective, it clears that whole line, right? It clears like everything that took place. So it's as if it never happened. Now, it's really interesting because in terms of that concept, something that I thought about was like, it's interesting to see that like there's like a conversation around over Population. Okay, I hope you guys are following, right? So too many people, etc., and so on and so forth. Once again, just my own opinion from my own observations, right? So it's interesting to see because it's like when I look at it from a metaphysical perspective, it's almost like, you know, we are kind of at peak wounding, just like unhealed energy within the collective. And it's like, it's almost like people have created like duplications of themselves, right? Because it's like all of these things are still traveling throughout the family lines. So it's like when people clear certain things, these issues will eventually also disappear as well. I hope you guys are following. I'm kind of speaking in code and I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense now, it'll make sense at a different time. So the whole concept is when you clear something, you're clearing it for the whole family line. Now, in terms of the concept of weak ancestors, because that's what your question was, I'm not sure what that is. I've never heard of weak ancestors, but I can see like the concept, like, because you were like, could they be against you? Like, I can see it kind of like, you know, not wanting maybe you to heal that or wanting to hold on to that aspect of the self or the trauma or so on and so forth, because there's maybe like a huge identification with that, if that makes sense, or like a personality created around it. Like this is more so metaphysically, I'm just like psychically saying. So I hope that makes sense. Am I clairvoyant? Yes, I'm clairvoyant. Clair is interesting. I want to say clairaudient because recently I found out that clairaudient can also be through speaking. So, okay, my main ones are clairvoyance, claircognizance, and clairsentience. Those are my main three. And then I would say clairaudient comes after that. But yes, definitely. If you guys are interested in expanding your own psychic gifts and abilities, I have a few videos under my metaphysical playlist. A few of them actually. One of them was getting in tune with your psychic gifts and abilities. I had one about divination tools to help you strengthen your psychic gifts and abilities. Then I had another one about how trauma, cognitive dissonance, psychic gifts and abilities, and spiritual awakenings are all connected. And then I had another one that I recently posted as well, but I can't remember the title. But yes, I have a whole bunch of videos in terms of how to get in tune with your own psychic gifts and abilities. And it's interesting because a lot of it is actually written in like the religious scriptures. Like I know people have a lot of religious trauma. It's just like, you know, if you kind of take off the shadow patriarchal lens that it's viewed through and you look at it from like the basis of it all, like the spiritual perspective, like the root of it all. I actually have book recommendations on this channel as well. If you guys kind of want to look at the spiritual roots of the religion, they're all kind of trying to teach people how to get in tune with their psychic gifts and abilities. Because a lot of it is like fasting and not engaging in like lower activities, lower chakra behaviors and these types of things. So if you look at the different texts, like they have different ways of going about it, getting to enlightenment and so on and so forth, but it's all there. Okay, it really is. So it's all about putting the pieces together. You're welcome. Okay, I'm glad that that resonated. Yes, I was trying to explain it because it's like it's a little bit more of like a higher level topic, I guess you can say, but that's kind of how it works. Anytime anyone is healing something or clearing something, you're clearing it for the line. And then when you clear that thing, it's as if it never happened, is really what that is. Like, I guess kind of like the butterfly effect, or it's this thing to do with time. I can't even really explain it. I can just like psychically see it. Like it's like it just vanishes right out of the, I guess, astral plane. Okay, you guys wanted to know about artist placements. So I actually have career astrology on my TikTok. So I have playlists on there as well. And I have career astrology on there as well. Although, you know, right now I would probably go even more in depth compared to what I had put there at that time. But it depends, like, what are you looking at in terms of an artist? Are you looking at it in terms of painting or just being super creative, or is it music? Like, what kind of artist is it? But overall, like creativity in a natal chart, you're gonna look at the 5th house. You're gonna look to see, do you have a lot of 5th house energy in your chart? You're gonna look at the 12th house. You're gonna look at any sort of Neptunian influence in your natal chart. Okay, maybe like Sun conjunct Neptune, Venus conjunct Neptune could be one as well. Even Sun conjunct Venus could be one as well. So it depends, right? It depends like what kind of art is it, because like Mercury, let's say in the 12th house, could be a poet, for example. Like that's a type of art as well. Or even Neptune in the 3rd could also be a poet as well. So it depends, what kind of art are you looking for? Saturn in the 12th is going to be a writer, right? So there's a lot of have different types of art. Is it a writing type of art? Is it a singing, songwriting? Is it painting? Like there's so many different types of artists, right? But overall, like in terms of like an artist, if we look at it from the lens that this is someone who has heightened creativity and creative ability, you're going to look for 12th house. What's going on with the 12th house? Do you have a 12th house stellium? Do you have a 5th house stellium? Do you have maybe 3rd house also, if it's kind of anything to do with like words as well, right? You would look at the 3rd house. So it depends like what kind of art is it that we are talking about here. And then you're going to look at any sort of aspects to Venus and Neptune as well. Oh my God, I'm so glad that resonates. You say you really like when I explain the metaphysical side of things. It makes so much more sense when I do that. Thank you. I'm glad that it resonates with you guys because I tried to explain it in like a grounded way so you guys could understand. Hey Dee, how are you doing? I'm just going back up, so I'll get to you guys at the bottom. Just keep the comments coming. I'm just going in order. So Sylvie says, thoughts on North Node conjunct Saturn and synastry double whammy in Capricorn and Aquarius. The first thing that I thought of actually was karma with the father in this lifetime that you have to overcome. This more so psychically. What came through, karma with the father that you have to overcome. So he in a way is energetically like, I don't want to say in the way, but it is this, like either directly in the way of the life purpose or something that you have to clear with him, or if it's not him, the dominant masculine role in your life, and then authoritative figures, teachers, managers, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there could be a pattern here that's taking place in terms of some sort of like energetic beef. I don't know, I can't explain any other way, right? With some person that is in an authoritative figure that is, I don't want to say in the way, but it's like there could be something here that has to be cleared. Maybe like you really care about what these people think, or maybe they have like high expectations of you, or maybe they were like very strict or rigid in terms of like, you know, the path they wanted for you. So it's like part of your purpose in this lifetime actually is to break through that. It seems like it is a pattern, okay, that you are breaking through in this lifetime. This whole like restriction around your overall life purpose. I'm curious to know what house you have it in as well. Apollo says, some say you can find the range of time when you'll get married or become wealthy. Do I know what are the indicators of that? So I also had wealth. Yes, I think it's also under my career astrology playlist on my TikTok. I had wealth indicators in terms of what placements. In terms of marriage and when you'll get married, I find that sidereal Vedic astrology is very good at marriage, the whole like when you'll get married. Like I've seen some people even talking about like the sort of initials your person is gonna have. So I find that sidereal Vedic astrology is very good for the marriage aspect of things. But yes, I personally don't know any indicators. You said, Kennedy said, hi Barbara, can I read your natal chart? You were born in Limerick, Ireland at 9:13. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to go either on astro.com, Astro Cafe, AstroSeek. You can type in birth chart on Google and you can put in all that information, and then you can come back here and type in any questions that you might have about your birth chart. Apollo said also if there are any indicators of divorce and when it'll happen. For divorce, I do know that it's usually recommended if you have Saturn in the 7th house to wait until after your Saturn return for marriage, okay? Because a lot of the time, these people get into serious relationships when they're young, and then basically what happens is by the time their Saturn return comes, it's like Saturn starts to shake up your world. And basically you might go through a divorce, okay, if you have Saturn in the 7th house. So I'm not saying that's for everybody. Obviously you want to look at the whole chart. You want to look at aspects. You can also see like what other transits are taking place. But that is one of the placements. Now there was another one too. If you have if you're a Cancer rising and your descendant is in Capricorn as well. Okay, so if you have Capricorn in your 7th house, it could be similar sort of advice for those types of people in terms of like waiting for marriage until after your Saturn return. Okay, in terms of marriage in general, it's interesting because it's like you will see that for some people it's part of their life purpose to get married early because it's kind of like them and their partner. It's really interesting to see because everything is karmic. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like the people who get married young, it's kind of like part of their life purpose is like the rest of like the events that are meant to happen in their life can't happen until they get married. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so again, if we look at it from a metaphysical perspective, there's like an order to things, but for other people, it's like certain things have to take place before they get married, right? So it depends, but yes, definitely sidereal Vedic astrology for marriage is going to be like even more in depth and more insightful if you guys are interested. Hey Beatrice, how are you doing? You said I did your natal and progressive chart last year and it changed your life. Oh my gosh, that's so great to hear. You said you've been taking art classes to satisfy the Leo within you. You said you had your first live performance last Sunday. Oh my gosh, you said acting classes. That's awesome. How was it? Let me know how that was. That is so exciting. Oh my gosh, so good to hear. I'm just going back up. I'll come back down in just a second. Hey Jupiter, you said your chart is kind of interesting. You're a Sag rising with Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Aries, and Mars and Scorpio in the 12th house. Pisces, Sun, Saturn, Taurus, North Node, Leo. You feel like your life is all spiritual. Yes, that does seem like a very spiritual natal chart. You said you have Mercury, and then you said you have Mars and Scorpio. Yeah, the Mars and Scorpio is definitely going to be intense. You said you can't work in the physical or with the physical plane because you're always optimistic and philosophical, and people love being around you. But that Scorpio 12th house was pretty tough in life. You finally found like, yeah. So when you have Scorpio, so this is what's interesting with Sag rising people, okay? So it's like out on the surface, right? Because it's your first house. People might think you're fun, and people might think that like you're lighthearted and that like, you know, you like adventures and maybe travel and like doing like exciting things. But it's like what's bubbling beneath the surface, especially if your 12th house is in the sign of Scorpio. Now that's not going to be for everybody. Sometimes people have interception, so you always want to see what's happening with your 12th house, but beneath the surface is the 12th house in Scorpio. Okay, so it's like this deep desire for like the depths in life and like the depths in every situation and these types of things. So I feel like this is for everyone actually. I feel like once you master your 12th house, which is your unconscious, your life is going to be a lot easier, right? Because it's like sometimes also you might notice that like you might give off more of your 12th house energy to people. This is going to be more so people who are maybe a little bit more in tune, maybe not the everyday person, because sometimes like the everyday person is going to see things like from a very surface level perspective, so they might pick up on the first house more, if that makes sense. But for people who are a little bit more in tune, they'll probably pick up on your 12th house more, right? And a lot of the time, like if there's unintegrated shadows with the 12th house, I actually have a video on this on my YouTube channel as well. It's called How Do You Behave Unconsciously, and it is in the miscellaneous playlist, and that is based on your 12th house. So a lot of the time when you have unconscious traits, those things tend to come to the surface more because they're unconscious. That's just how it is down here. I'm not a psychologist, just my own observations. So it's like when someone has an unconscious trait, like it tends to take over maybe their personality, especially if it's a wound or something of that sort. So this is why you always want to look at your 12th house and see what's going on in the 12th house, because these are going to be hidden aspects of yourself as well, maybe even hidden desires that you might have. So that's what's really, really interesting that you mentioned that, you know, you have that Scorpio 12th house, because it's like, again, it's the depths of life, but it's not easy because when you have Scorpio in the 12th house or Pluto in the 12th house, like there's a lot of things going on with your unconscious that basically you have to resolve, is really, really what that is. That could be for any 12th house sign, right? But especially because it's Scorpio, it could be paranoias, it could be fears. It's like the darkness, right? So interesting that you mentioned that. You said it was life-changing, soul-satisfying, meeting a new tribe and a community. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I'm so glad that you did that. Yes, exactly. Because it's like sometimes you take that step and then you start to meet more people that are just on your vibe. Do you know what I mean? Like anytime you pick up anything and then it's like that kind of gives you more like energy to keep going. I hope that makes sense. So I'm so glad that you did that. Good for you. Hey everyone, welcome. I'm just going in order. I'll get to the people at the bottom in just a second. You said, so this is Desya, you said you're Pisces rising, Taurus moon, Sun and Sagittarius. You have Saturn in the second house, Aries. Could I help you with what to do with the Saturn in the second house in Aries? Okay, so it's interesting for Saturn in the second house people, okay? These people either karmically incarnate into money or into struggles around money, okay? So the karma is money, really, in this lifetime. So either you come through into this lifetime and like it's carried over karma from a past life where it's like the money aspect is set and it's like you might not have to think about that, or it comes through as like maybe you have, you know, struggles around money. It doesn't really matter whether the money's there or not there, because it's like even if like let's say the home was financially stable, maybe there were like microaggressions when it came to money and finances, which made you feel like there wasn't money, right? So that's that Saturn in the second house. It's restricting the area of money, and it's also restricting the area of self-worth. So for everyone in general to know in life, like the amount of money that you're making is directly connected to your self-worth, is really, really what that is. That's why the second house deals with money and it deals with self-worth. So it's kind of like a matter of figuring out, you know, how much do I think that my time and my energy is worth, right? So that's really what it all comes down to. And And it's like, sometimes it's like pre-programming. Like there's nothing really that you can do if you have kind of been put on a specific trajectory to go into a certain specific industry. I hope that makes sense. Or like maybe even like a certain economic bracket, right? But it's like, if you have that in your conscious mind, you can break out of that, right? Because it's like, now you have the awareness that it's like, okay, you know, maybe I had this type of upbringing when it came to money, or these types of belief systems, or this type of scarcity. And you're always going to look, because it is Saturn in the second house, usually it's going to be the father that has these belief systems. But if it's not the father, it can be the dominant masculine role in your life. It can be maybe the mother if the roles are reversed, whoever was that dominant masculine role in your life, okay? And throughout your life, it perpetuates. So this person kind of introduces you, when you have Saturn in the second, into like what your now belief systems and foundations around money are going to be. So like, let's say when you were growing up, like all the time, maybe the parents or parent, whoever it was, make comments about like, oh, look, this is this expensive, we can't buy that right now. Like these little comments, right? Here and there, you know, you shouldn't buy that right now, like whatever it is, something like this, okay? So if you were hearing that as a child, you unconsciously, right, like make the connection. And by the way, once again, I'm not a psychologist, just my own observations, but you make that connection, right? That it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm not worthy of receiving this thing, right? That's kind of where it starts. So the Saturn in the second, right, the karma in this lifetime is to overcome that basically. And usually you do. So Saturn, it's like you kind of go through a certain amount of Saturn cycles. Usually they say Saturn matures around the age of 35. These days, the frequency of the planet is higher, right? So because the frequency of the planet is higher, people are learning things sooner, people are healing, they're becoming more aware and all these types of things. So it could happen sooner, right? But traditionally in astrology, Saturn matures around the age of 35. So by then you've gone through enough Saturn cycles to kind of master that area. So you can always look, and this is for any Saturn placement, like you can always look at Saturn as the area that you're mastering in this lifetime. So you might have the most amount of struggle when you're younger in that area, and then eventually you master that area, okay? Hey, welcome everyone. I'm answering astrology questions about your natal charts, metaphysical questions, and yes, anything you guys would like to know about. Let's see. You said, if you could accomplish one thing in this lifetime, what would I recommend it to be? I mean, that's a very broad question. You said, you know, 2 people with Saturn in the 12th house who lost their fathers at a young age. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. You said the internet had a problem, so you weren't able to hear my response, but you'll hear it after the live ends. Yes, definitely. It's definitely recorded. You guys are dying when I said energetic beef. I know. I always like talk about that sometimes, like when I'm talking with my friends, and it's like, I don't know, I think it's because I have a bunch of Scorpio energy in my natal chart, but I always know when I have energetic beef going on with someone. It's like unspoken. It's like maybe the person just like doesn't F with you for whatever reason, for like lack of a better term. And I'm like, oh, like it's more so jokingly, right? Because it's like not anything that happened. But yeah, I say to my friends and I'm like, we have energetic beef because it's like happening like in the energetic field. It's like not actually happening in real life. If that makes sense. It's just like a vibe, you know? Make sure you guys like the live. You said, what about fame indicators in a natal chart? You have Leo at 29 degrees, but it's on Chiron. Yeah, so for like the fame degrees, you know, the closer it is to your personal planets, the more it's going to have an effect on you, if that makes sense. Okay, so I have that on my YouTube channel. It's under the miscellaneous playlist for fame in a natal chart and the fame degrees as well. There are 2 videos, I believe, where I talk about fame. You said, yes, you might be clairvoyant and clairsentient. You have a lot of 12th house energy, so everything is so hidden, unconscious. You have a rich inner world a lot, and you haven't figured that out yet. But you said you have seen your dead brother. Oh my gosh, so sorry to hear that. And your uncle, and you knew your uncle was dead before you were told he was dead. You want to be a medium one day, your biggest dream. Absolutely. Even if you have Scorpio energy in your chart, A house energy, that's all mediumship ability. If you have Scorpio in your 4th house, if you have a Scorpio moon, that is all going to give you mediumship ability, is really, really what that is. And 12th house also, like, here's the thing, you know, in terms of like developing your psychic gifts and abilities, what you really want to do is, first of all, you have to take the time to learn yourself and learn your own energy. It's so interesting. I was just explaining this to people in my head earlier today, actually. So it's like, you have to learn your own energy, and it's like the biggest blessing in this life is time and the ability to be with yourself and in your own energetic field, which is interesting because a lot of people fear being in their own energy and they fear being on their own, right? Like that's kind of like the codependency wound within the feminine energy in the collective. Now, this is within the feminine energy, doesn't mean that it is just women, okay? It's going to be anybody really, because we all have masculine and feminine energies within us, okay? So with that being said, if you have the possibility to be in your own energy and learn yourself, first, you're going to start taking off other people's energies off of you. Because if you're a 12th house person, 8th house person, maybe even 4th house too, like you absorb a lot is really what that is. You absorb a lot of other people's stuff. And it's hard to tap into the psychic world when you're too enmeshed with other people's energies. You know what I mean? That's why I talk about developing a strong solar plexus chakra, because that gives you like the spiritual strength, you know? It basically gets your aura to go outwards. That's kind of how I psychically see it. Like you want your aura to start basically expanding outwards is really what that is, what that is, right? So when you're able to do that, right, at that point, that you're going to be able to decipher also, like, this person is bad news bears, I'm not going to let them into my energetic field, this person is an energy vampire, this person is like this, right? But up until that point, you're going to be blurred. Do you know what I mean? Because you're too enmeshed with other people. And that's kind of just like the struggle of the 12th house and the paradox, I guess you can say, right? Because it's like also when you're more unaware, you're kind of taking on other people's things and you're purging for those people. But it's like, why are you purging for them? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have to purge for the people around you? Like, let's say it's your friends, or your partners, or your family members, like whoever you're around, you know? It's like you internalize the energy and then you purge it out, like for that person. But it's like, that can be very draining for you, is really what that is. So it's like you have to learn how to develop strong energetic boundaries, is really what that is. Sometimes what I do is like, if I sense a person, like I meet a person and like I know that this person has the potential of being an energy vampire, like I just right away develop like an energetic boundary. Like I just think it in my mind, because actually we're all telepathic, okay? So we're all telepathic. So you can like, sometimes you don't even have to have conversations with people in the physical, like in the 3D, you can have telepathic conversations with them. And it's like, other people are going to pick up on that, right? So it's like, you just have to put like an energetic wall, okay? Or even like a mirror sometimes, or like a deflector also is sometimes what I do if I can sense it, because that actually happened to me once. So I can confirm this, okay? But again, just from my own experience, right? So one time I met a person and I knew this person could potentially be an energy vampire. So I kind of like put up this energetic wall, right? Like I was like, no, like this is not going to go down that road. And I knew this person was going to be around because like we had mutual friends or whatever. So it was interesting because the energy that was going to be directed toward me actually deflected and bounced off of me. And then they ended up in that situation with another person. Okay. So this is how you guys can do it. Like literally, like when you're communicating with the other side, or you're like in the psychic realms, like it's all through thought, is really what that is. And I actually said that in my throat chakra video. Like currently the way that this plane is like us speaking is a form of purging, which is awesome. You want to speak and you want to have a voice, right? But in the higher realms and in the higher vibrations, like speaking takes up a lot of energy. So it's like everything is telepathic. I hope that makes sense. I'm just going back up. Should you follow tropical or Vedic? Okay, I always give the same answer for this question. I know a lot of people don't know which direction to go in. Once again, that's kind of tied into you knowing yourself. So the thing is, like, I look at both for myself. Like I have looked at both for myself, but I do my readings off of the tropical Placidus system because that is the chart that resonates most with me and most with my life, and also the transits. Okay, so those are the things that you want to look at. You want to see which chart resonates most with you, your personality, your upbringing. That's why like the ascendant, which is your first house, descendant, 7th house, midheaven, 10th house, and the IC, which is your 4th house, are going to tell you a lot about you, right? So it's like, that's going to be different in both systems, is really what that is. So that's what you need to do. You want to see what resonates most with you. And then you also want to look at the transits and see, like, maybe there was a certain event, let's say like a big event that took place within your life. Maybe it was a marriage, maybe it was the birth of a child, or maybe it was a struggle that you had. Maybe you struggled with speech, like whatever it is. Okay. So there's something, right? You want to see which of the charts is that playing out in, is really what that is. Especially if you're going to do readings, then you have to do it with the chart that resonates most with your chart, or like the system that resonates most with your chart. I hope that makes sense. Hey, how you guys doing? What's new? I'm just answering astrology questions and going in order. I will get to the bottom, but I'm going from the top. What are my thoughts on people with concentrated signs in their chart? Your Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Pisces, Aries, Mars, and then you have your Jupiter, Saturn are in Taurus, Uranus, and Neptune in Aquarius. Yeah, so anytime you have any like stelliums or like a focus or like a theme in your chart, like everyone has a theme, right? So it's like, it's something that you're either mastering in this lifetime or you're clearing, is really what that is. So for example, like when you have Mercury and Venus and Pisces, and your sun is in Pisces, so you have a Pisces stellium, like this lifetime is very spiritual for you. It's going to be very creative. It might be very psychic, but at the same time, you're also meant to master grounding, right, in this lifetime. So you're going to struggle on this earth plane. For example, when you have a lot of Piscean energy or 12th house energy, because you're off in the ethers all the time. So it's like when you have a chart like that, right? Like you kind of had to sit down and like figure out like what is your goal is really what that is. Because the thing is like if you're trying to achieve something material, then you have to figure out a way to ground the Piscean energy down, for example, right? So Pisces is very good at visualizing, but they get lost in the ethers is really what that is. And they go off into the crown, which is fine, right? Like that's fine to be up there, but it's like there's also an energy that's taking place on this earth plane. So if you have certain goals or dreams, you know, taking place, then you have to figure out how can you work with that energy. So for example, Pisces, you're gonna have to look at Virgo, right? Because this earth plane is made up of the earth energies, right? Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus. So it's like, if you have like a lot of Piscean energy, you wanna look at Virgo. What does this mean, right? So it could be having a consistent schedule, okay? Having a routine, you know, kind of like sitting down and perfecting something, picking one thing that you want to perfect. So that's kind of how you want to work with the energies. Like that's how I work with astrology, for example, right? Because it's like, I think you can achieve anything. It's just a matter of balancing the energies within yourself is really what that is. That's how I see astrology, so. What do I think about Sun conjunct Moon and synastry? I mean, that could be good because it's like the energy is familiar, right, between the two people. With Sun conjunct Moon, I actually have a synastry playlist. So in there, I do have Sun conjunct Moon. A lot of the time for the Moon conjunctions in synastry, usually the person with the Moon placement, here's the thing though with synastry, like you have to look at everything, right? Happening in the synastry charts, but usually like the moon person for moon synastry feels things more, right? So it's like the moon person feels like they are, you know, like helping the sun person like shine, right? Like be who they are. And then the sun person likes having the moon person around because it's like the sun person feels like because of the moon person, they're shining, right? So it's like it's a familiar energy is really what that is. It could go into ego, right? Because the sun can be your ego, right? So it's like the moon person might kind of feel emotionally fulfilled for feeding into the sun person's ego, and then the sun person might want to have the moon person around because the moon person feeds into their ego. I hope that makes sense. So for all synastry energy as well, it depends how evolved the people are, okay? It's really this. Sun Dog says, are there things that come easy in life and can you read that in a birth chart? For example, thanks for the likes, you guys. For example, is there a best possible, easiest career and relationship to have, way to live? Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of anything, you want to look at your natal chart, right? So it's like you can do things, right? Like for example, you can do certain things that aren't in alignment with your natal chart, but they're going to be really challenging because you're going against the energy, but you can still do them. Do you know what I mean? Like for example, but here's the thing too, like here's the thing, I still wonder to myself, because I'm like, I do feel like, especially when people are unconscious, they're still following the natal chart, right? In a way. So it's like, here's the thing, if you are following your intuition, right? And you're kind of going like with the feeling aspect of things and you're kind of doing things that you actually want to be doing, you'll see that the energy is going in flow with the natal chart, right? If you're going against that, or if you're doing things for ego-driven reasons, and when I say ego-driven reasons, it could be kind of like to prove someone wrong, or it could be like something that your family expects of you, or society, or you think is like the right way, or like you saw somebody else do it, for example, because it's like, you can look at the natal chart as like a blueprint, right? And now we can argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because then you only have a certain amount of, a certain amount of possible outcomes, right? Because we're only playing within the natal chart. So that's a different conversation for a different day. I'm not going to take you guys too much into the crown chakra today, but okay, and you guys can think about that and ponder that in your own time as well, okay? But the whole thing here is like, if you are actually going in tune with like your own energy and you're listening to your intuition, you'll see that there's a certain blueprint for every certain person and every certain soul, right? So it's like when we look at the way society is, it's very boxy, okay? It's like there's a certain trajectory that people think is the right or correct trajectory, right? These days, people are breaking out of this, which is awesome, okay? Because we are going into a more Aquarian time, okay? And it's gonna be more unconventional and different. But up until this point, it's been very boxy. And you can also look at that in terms of like, just like energies, like it was very dense, right? So for example, okay, I'll give you guys like an example. Like let's say you had a specific like way, or like idea of how to become a doctor, for example, right? Like let's say, everybody goes to school and then they get their undergraduate degree and then they go do med school and so on and so forth. And that is like the outline trajectory, right? But maybe, you know, within yourself, there's like this intuitive aspect of you that's like, okay, well, I know I'm going to become a doctor later on in life, but I don't feel like doing the schooling just yet. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a matter of getting in tune with your intuition, right? Because it's like, let's say you do listen to your intuition. Well, maybe you're going to take a little bit of a different road, but it's like, it's still going to get you to that outcome that you're trying to get to. So this is what I mean, right? It's like, it's very boxy down here on this earth plane. And like, you know, if you're kind of going by ego-driven things, or like, again, maybe it's parental expectations, like let's say like there's a family business or whatever, and it's like maybe you're next in line to take on the family business, but maybe your natal chart is like you being an artist, for example, right? So that's the whole thing here. Like your whole life is easier when you're following the natal chart, and you'll see if you're actually in flow with your intuition, you're actually following it anyways. I hope that makes sense, right? Because it's like, is the energy within you already, right? So it's like, it's a matter of getting in tune with your intuition is really what that is, because everyone has like that inner compass is really, really what that is. It's going to lead you in the direction that you're meant to go in. And it's like, also, everyone's gonna have their own way of doing something. I hope that makes sense. And especially like to the outside person, they might kind of be like, well, that's not how you do it. You have to do it this way, or like, this is how you should go about this. But it's like, again, you know, if you just listen to yourself and you shut out the external voices, you're gonna get to your end result maybe even faster, right? This is why also, a lot of the time, Scorpionic types of people learn not to tell people about their goals, right? Because other people can interfere with their energies in terms of like, maybe they're jealous, maybe they put in their limiting beliefs into your goals. This is for everybody, really. Like, I think it's best to keep it to yourself until it comes into fruition, but that's just my own opinion. Hey, how are you guys doing? Yeah, it is a full moon. It's in Scorpio. It is in Scorpio. So definitely intense energetically. Probably you guys want to see what house you guys have Scorpio in. That's what's going to be affected for you guys. Libra Mars in the first house, your Libra rising is in that kind of contradictory. Libra Mars in the first house and your Libra rising. Yeah, when you have a Libra rising, everything is in the opposite. All of the signs are like in the opposite house, right? So there's that. But then also when you have Mars in Libra, it's a little bit of a struggle. Like it's a similar energy actually, because like Mars can also be your ego as well in a way, right? Because the first house is Aries, Mars is Aries. So it's like when you have Mars in Libra, and it's interesting when you have Libra rising as well, like Mars in Libra in terms of like going after your goals, like you might be a little bit more like by the sidelines. I hope that makes sense. Or like you're going to think about it longer, right? Or should I do it? Should I not do it? And it's like by the time Mars in Libra makes a decision to do something, well, the opportunity could have passed. So that's when you want to look at Aries, right? And learn from Mars and Aries, which is like Aries just jumps after things, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm grabbing this opportunity and I'm going for it like right now, okay? That's kind of how the energy works. So it's like anytime you guys have like a fallen energy in your chart or these types of things, right? You guys want to look at the oppositional energy and see how does that energy behave, and how can you incorporate that energy into your life. So this is what I was saying also with Libra energy as well, right? For Mars and Libra, like Mars and Libra a lot of the time is indecisive, because I find if anyone is indecisive, you're going through the inner battle between your intuition and your ego, right? Or heart versus ego. Your intuition and your heart are connected, right? Because if you're in your heart space and you are resonating out of the heart chakra, right? You're also going to be going in alignment with things that are like for your highest good. I hope that makes sense, right? That's why you want to clear through all of the lower chakra things. And if you guys are interested in learning about that, I have an Exploring the Chakra series where you guys can look at the lower 3 chakras and see maybe what could be energetically holding you back, right? But you want to go up, right? You want to go you want to go up through the chakras, right? Because it's like the way that I've psychically seen it is like when you're balanced in the upper 3 and you're balanced in the lower 3, then you're operating out of the heart space. That's how I see it. So it's like you want to develop that intuition is really what that is. So that's kind of like where Libra comes through in terms of like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? Because they're going through that whole debate of intuition, of like what they actually want to be doing, okay, and then ego, right? So your ego could be anything. It could be like what society wants for you. It could be things like money, right? Sometimes that could be holding people back. So you want to look at the lower 3 chakras once again. It could be like maybe like not having the confidence if you're looking at solar plexus chakra, or like wanting someone else's approval, because like Libra wants people to like them, right? That's where Libra struggles, especially when you have it in the rising. It's like that's where Libra falls into people pleasing, because the rising is your first house, right? And it's like the rising sign is who you are, right? Who you're presenting yourself to the world as. And it should be that energy of like your identity that you're creating, right? But it's like Libra's creating it through other people. So when you have Libra rising, you don't really know who you are, because you've created a lot of your identity through other people. So you want to take the time to learn yourself as well, okay? So that's the biggest blessing in this life, is time and learning about yourself is really what that is. You're welcome. Thanks for being on the live. Thanks for the likes, you guys. Thanks for the shares and the subscribes. You said, so this is Evan, you said, hey, hi, how are you? You said you currently don't like the work that you're doing. You're looking for something new. You have a Venus and Pisces in the 2nd, and then you have Neptune and Capricorn in the 12th. Thanks. Okay, that's very creative. Those are creative placements, okay? You could be interested in art of some sort. So here's the thing, okay? Or at least like, obviously everyone has the free will to do what they want, but here's the thing, like with the art world, right? Sometimes when you have like an art venture, like what tends to happen with people is like, when you have an art venture that you want to do, like the whole money, unless you come from money, okay? So it's going to be different for people, right? Depends on your financial situation, right? But sometimes what happens with people who want to do art, right? Or something artistic or creative, they might not necessarily have, let's say like the financial aspect of things, or, you know, like the financial backing or whatever it is, right? So again, you guys have the free will to do what you want, and it depends on your situations, right? Because it's going to be different for different people. But it's like sometimes with this energy, right? Like let's say right now you're doing some kind of work and you're saying you don't like doing it. You know, it's about shifting your perspective, right? Maybe you have to do the work for the money or financial aspect of things, but like finding something that you want to do on the side, building that thing up until you build it to the level, right, where you are now receiving the income from it, right, for example, right? That same thing goes for entrepreneurship as well. So it depends, right? It depends on your situation, because again, everyone has different financial backgrounds, right? But this is the whole thing here. So it's like, sometimes it's about shifting the perspective, right? Because it's like, maybe you need to work at that job because it's going to be bringing you in money. But it's like, when I look at that energy, right? Like the Venus and Pisces and that energy, it's like, it's very intuitive. It's very like creative and so on and so forth. So at least like starting that, right? Like starting these creative projects, things that you want to do on the side, because it's like the more energy and focus you put toward that thing's going to grow, and then eventually you won't need this other thing anymore. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And it's like, sometimes it's just like taking the initial step, right? Like for example, you know, a lot of the time in this life it's about who you know and meeting the right people, right? So like, let's say you do want to do something creative, right? Like figuring out how can you go about this. Like it depends on what it is, right? Like now we have the internet as well, right? Because we have the internet and we're blessed with that, you can post yourself online as well, right? So it depends. But it's like, again, the way that I just psychically see it is like, if you look at it as like two balloons, right? Like this balloon currently is bigger because it's maybe like your job that you're doing, and this one hasn't grown yet. But like the more energy you put into this balloon, it's growing, and this one is kind of like depleting and dying off because you eventually won't need it anymore. So that's kind of how you guys can make transitions. Sometimes you can make abrupt transitions as well, but it depends again. Okay, this is just like the reality of things. It depends on your financial background, because different people have different financial backgrounds. Sometimes you have to be working at something and building another thing on the side, but it's like you can't get discouraged in terms of this thing that you're building on the side. You know what I mean? You have to have like that perseverance and belief in it that it's gonna grow. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Hey, what's up? I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts. Hey, Katie. If you want to find the purpose of your life through astrology, what aspect of astrology should you pay attention to? I look at everything, okay? So in terms of life purpose, you can look at your North Node, absolutely, but you can look at everything, right? Because it depends. You have a certain collection of energies in your chart. Is there a certain abundance of energies in your chart? Because that's going to be part of your life purpose. So it's this, okay? You can look at your North Node as well. Like overall, your North Node is your life purpose, but you want to look at everything. That's the thing. You want to see, or is there a certain amount of houses taking place? Also, a lot of the time in terms of life purpose, you know, if you've gone through something challenging or you've overcome something, a lot of the time that's actually part of your life purpose, maybe to help another person overcome that thing, you know, by again, speaking about it earlier in this live, I was talking about how in this current dimension, like in the way the things are currently, and the fact that we have a voice in our throat chakra, right? Like speaking helps you purge, right? So the more you speak about something or share your story, that's why TikTok was such a blessing, right? Because like so many people came online and then they started sharing like their experiences, and then other people were like, oh my gosh, I'm not so alone. There's other people who feel like me, and then those people share, and that's why TikTok. And it's interesting because when TikTok blew up, it blew up. Yes, I know it kind of started around 2020, but I would say it mainly blew up in 2021, which was a 5-year, okay? And then that is your throat chakra, okay? So it's really, really interesting to see, because it's like, again, you know, all humans are healers at the end of the day. This is important to understand. Like sometimes people think that a healer has a certain type of aesthetic or like a certain way that they look or a certain way that they dress, but that's kind of like a fourth dimensional perception on a higher dimensional topic, okay? I hope that makes sense. Like you don't have to look a certain way to be a healer. Like sometimes talking to the person on the street is going to help them them, right? Like, let's say you guys are just having like a regular conversation. Maybe you say something inspirational to that person. You have now helped this person heal in one way, shape, or form. So that's kind of how that works, is really what that is. So if you guys want to know your life purpose, look at your overall life. Is there something that you had a challenge in? Did you struggle in a certain area? That's going to tell you. So sometimes your Saturn can tell you as well. Okay. Sometimes your Pluto can tell you. So you want to look at the whole chart, right? Sometimes you have a collection of energies, right? So it's like, let's say you have a collection of like, Capricorn energy in your natal chart. What part of your life purpose is to climb to higher heights and get the money, get the gains, maybe become a business person, or become like, let's say it's like a dentist who opens up their own practice, like these types of things, right? And it's like, that's part of your life purpose, because maybe you can help other people, or just like by you being you, right? And doing these things is inspiring other people, okay? It's inspiring other people to do their own thing as well. So you're welcome. Hey Bella, how are you doing? How are you guys doing? I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. I'm going in order, so feel free to comment below. Jupiter says, you have another question. Do I believe that tropical is our ego and sidereal is our real self? You're an astrologer yourself and you feel that both are you. Do I resonate? I want to hear my thoughts. I don't know. I honestly... It's hard to say, because I heard someone say who is a tropical astrologer, they were like, well, I do Western astrology because I live in the West. And I thought that was interesting. I haven't really thought about it deeper than that. I just thought their perception was interesting. I don't really have an opinion, to be honest. Like, I don't know, maybe it's my Mercury in Libra. Like, I really just think it's like you want to see what resonates more with you. I think that both systems are available to us because there's truth in both. Like, that's how I see it. Like, you want to look at everything is really what that is. And I know that sometimes people who look at sidereal, like the Vedic system, like they say that that's like where the stars actually are. But it's like then you have aspects taking place in your natal chart as well. So it's like the aspects are going to be the same in both of the systems, right? So it's hard to say. Like, I know certain types of astrology are good for certain things. Like earlier in this live, I was talking about like if you want to look at marriage and like your spouse and partner type of astrology, like Vedic is very, very good for that. But then there's somebody else that I also know who does like Babylonian Kabbalistic astrology. So there's so many different types, right? Like there's so many different types of astrology. So it's hard to say, because it's like, I do feel like it's all available to us, because it's like there's truth in all of it, and you want to look at it all is really, really what that is, to get like the overall picture of who you are. And it's interesting because it's like also when we have a lot of information, I do feel like, what tends to happen is like there tends to be something that takes place, like this is just my own opinion, but there tends to be something that takes place where it's like there's two truths and a lie sometimes mixed in certain things. So it's like you really need to develop discernment. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. It's like developing discernment and seeing what resonates with you, what resonates with your heart space, which is interesting because I mentioned that in this live earlier. So it's kind of like the theme of the live, okay? Developing the heart space and like what really resonates within your body. So it's interesting because collectively right now, like we are going through that, like collectively, the collective is learning to develop their discernment. What's true, what's not true, okay? Because I do feel like that's going to be very needed and necessary moving forward, like in the years to come, okay? Because it's like things are changing and shifting so quickly, right? So it's like when you're in tune with the heart space and especially the emotions, and it's just unfortunate because I was thinking about this today as well, because it's like when people get cut off from their emotions and like the emotional aspect of themselves, like in a way you're being cut off from source. I hope that makes sense, because it's like your heart space in a way is your connection to source, the divine, the creator, God, like whatever term you guys want to use, okay? So it's like when you're in tune with your emotions, right? And you know how you feel about things, okay? That's going to give you more insight. Like, is this true? Is this not true? Is this resonating? Is this not resonating? And that's the only way you'll know, is really, really what that is. So it's hard to say because it's going to resonate, like different things are going to resonate with different people. Oh my gosh, you printed your transcript from your natal chart reading and it was 154 pages. That's the thing, okay? Even though the reading, like the regular natal chart is 45 minutes and the other one is 1 hour, like I talk fast, okay? So it's a lot of information. That's so funny. Let me screenshot that just so I have it for my memories. That's so funny. 154 pages. Let's see, what else are you guys saying in here? Andrea says North Node conjunct your Sun, 9th house Aries, and your South Node is conjunct your Moon in the 3rd house in Libra. Okay, so your dynamic with the mother, with the South Node conjunct your Moon, is being carried over from a past life into this lifetime. It's interesting it's in the 3rd house because it's like, I feel like there's something here where the mother, or again, dominant feminine role in your life, like in a way shut off your throat chakra, didn't allow you to express, didn't allow you to express yourself, like express who you truly are. That's more so psychically what I'm picking up on. So that's that, okay? And then your North Node conjunct your sun. Part of your lifetime, like purpose in this lifetime is to like get in tune with like ego, right? Like who you are, like your identity is really, really what that is. The ninth house in here, like Aries also, okay, that's interesting too. Aries is you basically like paving a new path, okay? It could be this. So it could be you paving a new path compared to maybe in like previous lifetimes, or maybe you kind of went along with what the family wanted for you, for example, okay? Because when you have Aries anywhere in the big three, you're stepping away from, let's say, like the family line. Like because it's in the sun, it's like the ego is the identity. It could be the father as well. So there could be an expectation here, right, of you that you're stepping away from. Or like, let's say everyone in the family was a lawyer. Well, maybe you want to be a chef, okay? Stuff like this, okay? Something that you're doing that's different, and you're also doing it for yourself on that higher self level as well, okay? Ninth house, so ninth house, having it in your North Node and in your sun, like part of your purpose is the higher mind, the higher learning, the philosophies, okay? Basically, in this lifetime for you, so, okay, the way you can look at the South Node as well is like it's something that you master, but you didn't get to express. So in a past, like because it's in the third house, you maybe didn't get to express maybe certain ideas that you had. It would have been in Libra. Okay, there could have been a lot of sacrificing for other people. Maybe you didn't get to share. Maybe it was like a lifetime where it was just like about other people, or just like sacrificing for your relationships, or maybe what people thought of you. You come through in this lifetime having it in Aries, and it's like, okay, no, like I'm figuring out who I am, what I want to do in this lifetime, and then everyone else is going to come through kind of thing, right? Also kind of utilizing. So a lot of your connections in this lifetime are from your past life because it's Libra, right? And they're actually meant to help prop you up into your life purpose, but you're not meant to get lost in it. I hope that makes sense, okay? So you might battle internally with like codependency or wanting people to like you, but you're actually meant to overcome that, okay? Because that's like a past life pattern. I hope that makes sense. You're welcome. You said from your experience, you believe that you used to behave like your tropical chart, but after your spiritual awakening, your whole life literally changed to the sidereal, and the dashes are fascinating as well. That's awesome. Oh, is it on portrait mode? I have it as landscape, so I don't know. I'm going to have to see after the live is done to see. Or sorry, no, yeah, I have it on portrait. I don't have it on landscape. Yeah. Scorpio sun, moon, and Mercury. Hey, Christopher, how are you doing? I love my Scorpios. You guys are awesome. Let's see. You said, what if you had to purge a lot of energy for your Scorpio mother? What is that in reference to? Moon, trine, Venus, and a natal chart. There could be issues or things going on with the mother that could be in the way of your relationships. Also, it could just be like, maybe it's unconscious, like maybe she makes you feel guilty, or like unconsciously you feel guilty or something of the sort, okay? Having that moon trine Venus. So keep this in mind, okay? How are you guys doing? What do I think about signature signs? Are they more important than your big three? Maria says you have a stellium in Scorpio, third house. Oh my gosh, all my Scorpios. You said Sun, Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and Pluto. Then you said the new moon is conjunct your Venus, Jupiter and Uranus transiting through your midheaven in Taurus 9th house. What would you like to know about that? Evan says your Pluto just hit your 4th house. Yes, it's transitioning at the moment in Aquarius. What your natal Saturn is in the 4th house. Okay, what to expect. So is your Saturn in Aquarius as well? Okay, so Pluto going through your 4th house, that's going to be intense. I have a video on my YouTube channel while we are here, but it's going to be under the Pluto playlist. I have 2 Pluto playlists. I have one Pluto going through the houses, and then I have one for the generational signs, okay, for Pluto. So 2 separate playlists. The houses, you guys can also look in terms of transits, okay? So it's like, it's for the natal house, yes, but also you guys can look at like Pluto in the 4th house. Yes, it's gonna resonate for people who have Pluto in the 4th house in their regular natal chart, but also if it's transiting your 4th house as well, okay? Some of those things are gonna resonate with you as well. So Pluto going through your 4th house, that's intense, okay? Because it's basically now destructing maybe belief systems around the home. It's giving you undertone energies of having a Scorpio moon. So maybe psychic gifts and abilities are coming online. Maybe your mediumship is coming online during this time. Maybe certain things are taking place, like, because you have Saturn in your 4th house as well. Like maybe there's certain things that like you maybe blocked out when you were younger that took place within the home, or like your upbringing, like these types of things, okay? Pluto's coming through and destructing that, okay? That's what Pluto does. So it's like, at the beginning of a Pluto transit, who you were, and by the time the Pluto transit is done, is like day and night, right? 2 completely different people. You can look at Pluto as like a tornado. That's what Plutonian people are like as well. They come through people's lives like a tornado and they kind of leave them with the debris to pick up. Now, I'm not trying to put fear out there, okay? Because I don't know, I'm just like Pluto dominant, so I'm used to the energy, but it's like, that's what Pluto does, okay? Pluto destructs and rebuilds so you can be in your highest version is really, really what that is. So it going through your 4th house is your emotional world, okay? It's maybe your upbringing, your home, hidden things, covert things, maybe emotional manipulation, things that could have taken place that you weren't aware of. Like all these things are now coming to the surface. But because it is a long transit, okay, it's going to be over an extended period of time. So you're not going to feel it like right away. Do you know what I mean? But at the end of it, you'll be like, wow, like compared to the beginning, it's like day and night. Because basically the way Pluto works is it's like a pendulum swing, okay? So what it does is it takes your power away in the area, okay? So that's like the shadow aspect of it. And then you go into the other extreme where you try to reclaim your power in that area. So you're trying to control, you're trying to do everything in your power to not have that powerless outcome again, right? And then eventually you neutralize somewhere in the middle, okay? And then when you neutralize in the middle, it's like in that Phoenix rising state where you're unbothered is really what that is, okay? So that's kind of how Plutonian energy works. You go through this extreme like change and catharsis, and it's in the 4th house for you, so it's on the emotional level is really what that is, okay? So during this time, getting in tune with your emotions, maybe writing is gonna help you. If you're someone who's like in the creative industry, you're interested in being in like the creative industry, like that placement is gonna help you, right? Like let's say you're writing or you're like a singer or like a songwriter, like getting the feelings out, right? If you're not sharing it with people, at least like writing it for yourself so it doesn't go in. Because Plutonian energy, when it's bottled within and it doesn't have an outlet, it turns into destruction within the self, okay? Like self-destructing and self-sabotage. So keep this in mind. You said, I'm going to go back up to the top in just a second. You said you have Saturn and Pisces ruling your 7th house. You've never been in a relationship. Do I think you can meet the one? You're 30, you're turning 30 soon. Saturn and Pisces is ruling your 7th house. Yeah, so here's the thing, okay? Anytime, I actually have a video that I put out recently. It's called Stop Falling for People's Potential. So people who have Pisces in their 7th, or in your case, it's ruling your 7th house, okay? If you have Pisces in the 7th, Venus in Pisces, maybe Venus in the 12th house, any sort of Venus and Pisces aspect, sorry, Venus and Neptune aspects, okay? So Venus being aspected by Neptune, any sort of Neptune in the 5th, Neptune in the 7th, Pisces in the 5th, Pisces in the 7th, these people, okay? Or if you have 12th house energy in your chart as well, okay? These people, what happens with them is they idealize relationships, okay? So you're idealizing relationships, you're seeking for this idealistic type of situation. Now, with that being said, you also see people through this idealistic lens. Now, this energy can manifest in a lot of different ways, right? For example, sometimes these people can be single for extended periods of time because they always feel like they still haven't found that ideal person yet. Do you know what I mean? Because they're kind of chasing a feeling, I feel like. Like they're looking more so for a feeling versus a person, but they project it onto a person. Or sometimes they can project this idea onto a person, so they're falling in love with the person's potential, which can lead to like unfortunate situations because it's like the person that you're falling for isn't actually what's happening in this physical plane. I hope that makes sense. So it's like trying to ground it back down and really see how are these people behaving in this physical reality? Is it matching up to what I see within this person? Now, another thing that can happen within these people is they can be in relationships, right? But even when they are, they can still have this feeling like this ideal person like is still out there. Do you know what I mean? It's really interesting to see, okay? Because it's like, then they might not be happy with their partner, right? Because maybe they fell in love with an idealized version of this person. So keep in mind, anytime it comes to relationships, you're putting either people on a pedestal, you're seeing them through like a rose-colored lens, or you're seeing their ideal version or an ideal version that you want, you're putting it onto that person as well, okay? So maybe that's more so what's holding you back. I hope that makes sense, versus like the timing aspect of things. Hey, how are you guys doing? You said that was for you. Everything changes and everyone relates to you in a different way. Even your life changes after contemplating your sidereal self. You enter a flow state, no ego. That is awesome. You said, what would be a good profession for you? You also have Saturn and Sag in the 4th house. Oh, you were saying for your earlier. Okay, Maria, can you type all of that in one paragraph? Because your comment was all the way up there. I'm going to get back down to you in just a second. Oh, never mind. I found it. Okay, I found it. You said you have a stellium in Scorpio, so you're wondering what would be a good profession for you. So you have a stellium in Scorpio, Sun, you have Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, Pluto. Okay, so Mercury retrograde a lot of the times is a specific spiritual message that you're meant to communicate, okay? Having the abundance of Scorpio energy. So this, okay, remember how earlier there was someone who was asking about like how you can find someone's life purpose in a natal chart, right? So for example, someone who has the stellium in Scorpio, you're here to transform, right? You transform first, and then after you reach your level of transformation, I mean, you're always going to be transforming as a Scorpionic person, but after you reach a certain level of neutralized energy within, then you're transforming other people too. But also, it's interesting because you also have Venus in there as well, right? So through your relationships, you're transforming yourself, the other person is being transformed, and then the other person is also transforming you. I hope that makes sense, okay? So part of your life purpose or maybe career deals with transformation when you have a bunch of Scorpionic energy in there. So it depends. That can be in so many different realms because Scorpio deals with all things sex, death, rebirth, joint finances, taxes, and the occult. It could be psychology. It could be a therapist. It could be a sex therapist. It could be a mortician. It could be a financial advisor. It could be an accountant. It could be anything to do with money, right? It could be a personal trainer, right? Because you're helping a person transform their body. So it really depends, okay? It really, really depends. But that's Scorpio. Like Scorpio loves money, especially when you have it in the Venus. Somehow Scorpio Venus always has money, which is really interesting because people are always going to be like, where did you get that from? And you're just somehow always pulling it towards you. You're pulling it out of the ethers is really what that is. You said you have Jupiter and Uranus transiting your, hold on, you said Jupiter. Oh, the Jupiter and Uranus transit is conjuncting your midheaven. So having that take place is going to be an unconventional type of way to make money, okay? Any sort of Uranus aspects to your midheaven, it's unconventional, right? And also what I want to say about this as well is a lot of the time the Uranus aspect is going to be something to do with like your own twist on things. Do you know what I mean? So this is what I was saying also way earlier. I love how everything ties in these lives. So way earlier, I was talking about how like, you know, there's a certain trajectory for people sometimes that they think that they have to take, right? Like to become, I don't know, a bus driver, you have to do this, or to become a chef, you have to do this, right? But maybe like, you know, when a person is in tune with their intuition, they will like see that they don't have to necessarily take that path. And if they take maybe a different type of path, they'll still get the outcome, but maybe faster. So what do I mean by this? Okay, let's say you always wanted to be a chef, okay? Let's say you always wanted to be a chef, and it's like, again, there's this trajectory where it's like you have to do this, and then you have to do that, and you have to do that, and then you become the chef, right? Maybe your intuition is pulling you and is like, hey, why don't you go traveling for 6 months, okay? Let's say something like this is just as an example, but your intuition is pulling you, like you keep getting that nudge, but it's like the logical mind, which is your ego, is like, no, if I go away for 6 months, it's going to throw off my plan to become a chef. I have to, you know, do school, or like school starts in September and then I won't be able to start it until January, like whatever, right? But let's say you do that, okay? Let's say you listen to your intuition, you go traveling, you're like, whatever, I really want to do this, and like I'll get back to the trajectory of things. Maybe while you're traveling, you make a connection and that person somehow hooks you up with an even better chef school. Do you see what I mean? You know what I mean? Like this is kind of how it works when you go in flow, okay? When you go in terms of the intuition aspect of things versus like, this is how you do it, this is a trajectory, or like, you know, it has to be like this, it has to be rigid and linear, okay? So that's what I mean, right? So especially when you have Uranus now it's transiting your midheaven, it's gonna be more of this, like more of like adding your own flair to it, doing your own way. So it's this, okay? Having your midheaven overall in Taurus, well, your midheaven overall in Taurus is money, right? So this is maybe part of your career too. Again, in combination with the Scorpionic energy, like it's all about maybe making money, getting the wealth, getting the gains, and maybe helping other people too, okay? Transform maybe their financial status, for example. Follow your intuition. Yeah, I'm glad that resonated. Yeah, so that's the whole thing. So this is what's awesome, okay? When we learn about astrology, it's like astrology confirms what you already know within, right? But also astrology is going to tell you maybe certain things that are holding you back. Maybe it's a certain dynamic, maybe it's a certain shadow trait, maybe there's like generational things, maybe there are belief systems that are like, you know, that you've internalized that aren't actually yours, but are holding you back, right? Because it's like, here's the thing. We're moving through an accelerated time, right? So it depends. Obviously, everyone who's tuning into the live, like your upbringing is going to be different. And you're going to have to look at, you know, where the Pluto was for your parents and their generation, right? So it depends, like what Pluto generation they were a part of. But because we're going through the accelerated change and times are changing, like things that worked for people for a certain period of time or a certain generation, it's different now, right? So that's why really you have to get in tune with your intuition, because it's like they're going to tell you you have to do it this way, or this is how they did it, and like they got their outcome or whatever. But it's like if you go in terms of your intuition, it's going to be catered to you, is really what that is. And it's like this is for everything. Like the more that I hear even people's stories online, when people talking about certain things, they're always like, oh, I ignored the red flag, or I didn't see the red flag, or so on and so forth. So this is why you have to get in tune with your intuition. But like the only way you can get there is through experience. Do you know what I mean? So it's this, okay? So the more you're in tune with your intuition, it's going to be guiding you. It's like this internal compass that's like, okay, don't go there, or go there. You know what I mean? Like, go to the store today, or don't go to the store today, or you want to go to this event, but maybe you're being nudged, or like, you know, you're kind of like, I feel really tired today, I'm not going to go, you know? And then it's things like, it's such little small moments here and there, and it just like makes your life a whole lot easier is really what that is. You're welcome. Oh my gosh, Kayla, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad that it resonates, and I'm glad that you love the channel, and I'm happy that you're here, and thank you for everyone for being a part of the channel and your questions. And what else? Just thank you all for being awesome. Mystic Journal said, Barbara, you said Scorpio with Sag is dangerous. You're wondering what I mean. You've had someone with huge Scorpio stellium and a sun in Sag and conjunct Pluto. He tried. Yeah. Okay. It's so interesting. I literally picked up on that in the astral when I said that some people were going to be like, wait, what? But it is. Okay. So, you know, this is just from my own observations. Every sign has the light side and it has the shadow side, right? So I'm curious to know where this person had the Scorpio stellium, because you said this person tried to do witchcraft on you. And here's the thing, because it's like Scorpio, right? In combination with Sag, like Scorpio energy, especially if it's in the shadow, like sometimes this energy can be like, I'm gonna get what I want no matter what. And especially in combination with Sag, like Sag can be like that too when it's in the shadow, like it's fire. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it can be really intense, you know? And then combining it with the Scorpio can go into occult types of things, right? You asked me, is that the type of dangers that I meant? In a way, yes and no. Like I just meant in general, like these types of people, like are the types of people, if they're in the shadow, right? Like Scorpio and Sag types of people, like they're the types of people that are gonna do whatever like it takes to get to their end goal. Like even if that means doing something intense, like in your case, it was like an occult type of thing or like a witchcraft type of thing. That's kind of what I meant by like intense energetically, right? And also it's like Scorpio in the shadow can be very intense. Like they can be very possessive. They can be very like psychologically manipulative. They can be very emotionally manipulative. Like they can be very, very intense. And like Sag energy, like is like, again, it's like that forceful energy, right? Which is like, I'm going to do it. Like, you know what I mean? So when it's in the shadow, when it's in the positive, beautiful energy together, right? When it's in the divine version, okay? Because Sag is going to be like, you know, positive and optimistic and awesome. And like Scorpio is like, oh my gosh, like I'm focusing on my goal and like that's what I want. But if it's in the shadow, it can be really, really intense. Like these people can be intense. And also, not to mention, Sag is mutable, okay? Is really what that is. And I think I saw in here one of you guys asking something about serial killers too. You said, have I taken a look at serial killers' natal charts? Do I know any noticeable indicators of a person being a legitimate serial killer or not? And then you said asking because you were wondering what my thoughts are on the blog/videos of other readers pointing out bad serial killer placements. Meanwhile, there's a celebrity with the same placements and they're not doing anything. That's the thing, okay? In terms of like, okay, I'm not gonna say that word again, okay? So serial K, let's just call it that. The only thing that I've seen about that is like they talked about people with mutable energy in their natal chart, which I thought was interesting. But I haven't looked at overall natal charts for them, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. But in terms of like, again, it depends on the person, right? Like it depends what energy they go into. It's really hard to say because like you said, like you can have someone who has the same placement, but maybe they're not at that extreme of the energy, you know what I mean? So it depends because a lot of the time, like it depends, are you going into the light version of the energy or are you going into the shadow version of the energy? Because we all have that within us. This is important to understand, like everyone has a light side and everyone has a shadow side, right? Is really, really what that is. So very good question. Maybe I'll look into it and see and look at more natal charts to see what placements there could be. But yeah, that was the only thing that I saw was like a lot of like mutable energy in their natal charts. That's the only thing that I've seen. And I saw that in passing too. So I can't confirm it. Like I don't have enough information, but it's this, right? So it depends on the person. Like it depends also like where they come from. Like, do they have a certain level of unresolved trauma, right? Because the thing is when you go into like, and this is a whole other conversation topic of its own because I made the post on my community board where I talked about entities hooking into people's fields, right? So it's like, again, maybe this is going to be debatable. I don't know. But like sometimes these individuals who do these things, like have a lot of entity attachments operating through them, right? So the question is, how did these entities enter their vessel? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's a deeper conversation. There's just like so much to be said. But yeah, in terms of just like the natal chart, it's hard to say, right? First of all, I haven't seen enough. But second of all, like, you can go into either of the energies, and it's sometimes like a conscious choice. You know what I mean? Like consciously you being like, I'm not going to do this because it's a shadow trait. Do you know what I mean? Like if you have a certain shadow trait, like let's say you're a vengeful, like let's say Scorpio in the shadow, and Scorpio is like a vengeful type of person, not acting, you know, on that, for example, or being a possessive person or a jealous person, maybe having an outburst, right? So it depends on the person, and like their awareness is really, really what that is. You're welcome. Let's see what else you guys saying in here. Thanks for the likes, you guys. Neptune in the third house, you could be clairaudient. You could also be super psychic with that as well. Interesting, Edward, you know, some placements. You said you love how your generation is the first to learn to use with being that easily connected. Cancer rising, you said you just got put on administrative leave with no explanation. You've been A+ at work. Can I shed some light on the energies and how should one navigate? Okay, so here's the thing, okay? This is, again, maybe not astrological. This is more so maybe, I don't know, metaphysical, just like life, what I've learned. Like, the thing is like, here's the thing. Sometimes when something like that happens to people, right? Like the first thing that happens is like your ego is triggered, right? So your ego gets triggered because it's like, it's a rejection in a way, if you think about it, right? If you learn yourself, like that's actually what's happening, right? So it's like, as soon as the ego is rejected, if you can master that buffer period, okay, from the ego being rejected and not react, okay, just like sit with it, feel into it, and then make your decisions with like a level head, right? After you've calmed down and these types of things, then you're gonna make, again, maybe a better decision for you, because then you're going to go back into your heart space, right? And this is for anything in life. Like let's say you get rejected in any sort of situation, or you get triggered in any sort of situation, giving that buffer period, right? This is why Scorpios are masters at emotions, because they learn that emotional strength, right? To not react. Now, in terms of overall what's happening collectively, a lot of people are experiencing a lot of endings. Also, we're going through a full moon in Scorpio, so it's literally like Scorpio is going to cut through and be like, whatever doesn't serve you, it's going to eliminate it, right? Because it doesn't serve you anymore. And like from a higher perspective, what's happening is like the way that I see it, this is just my own opinion, so maybe it'll resonate, maybe it won't, but it's like from a higher perspective, things get shed because you're not meant to be doing that anymore. I hope that makes sense. Like it's in a way like your team, your angel team, your higher self, like whatever way you want to look at it, like they're trying to maneuver you is really what that is. Like recently I've been seeing psychically, like I've seen a lot of those memes, you know, where they have like the meme and like your angel team is kind of like, oh, or like you're asking your tarot card or something or whatever it is, and your angel team is like, oh my gosh, like she's gonna do it again, even though we gave her 50 signs not to. So I've been seeing that more psychically, right? So like, again, the more you get in tune with yourself, right, with your own emotions and these types of things, like you will start getting more in tune in general and seeing these things as like you being maneuvered. And again, it goes opposite to the way the structure has been, okay? So that's kind of like the theme of this live as well, right? Like there's a certain way that the structure of this world has been, right? And it's like, I don't want to call it ego, because anytime people hear ego, they think it's like a negative thing, but it's like the ego like basically clings onto the identity that it creates through that thing, is really what that is. So the structure is a certain way, right? So it's like, again, you know, if something like that happens, it's like right away, it could trigger you into different types of emotions, you know, like different people are going to experience different things. Sometimes for some people, it could be shame, for example, you know, even though, again, like you mentioned, you did nothing wrong, there's no explanation. So whatever it is, it's like, okay, allowing it to take place, not doing anything, like not panicking in that moment where it's like, let's say, oh my gosh, now you're like panicking and applying to jobs, because like, even if you're panicking and applying to jobs, the vibration you're putting out there in a way is like a desperate type of vibration. So the job that's going to come through might not be in alignment. You know what I mean? So giving it a buffer period, like however much time you need to come back into your body, come back into your energy, and then, you know, taking the next steps. And like, maybe it's an opportunity, for example, I don't know where you are in the world, but maybe you're going to get like, what's it called? Like the employment leave or like employment insurance, like whatever it is, like the money that they give you when like a company lays you off. And maybe during this period of time that you're like on this leave or like the employment insurance, and you're getting the funds, right? Like it depends where you are in the world, because I know maybe not all places have that. But it's like maybe during that time you discover a new hobby, you discover a new creative thing, right? Creative venture that you want to do, or maybe there's something you've been wanting to do this entire time, right? So in a way you can look at it as like the universe is now providing you with the space to do maybe your next thing, okay? Or like maybe more of the thing that you want to do, or maybe something that's more in alignment with you. The way that I see it also psychically sometimes like the way that I see it, I don't know if you guys have ever watched like the Titanic. I actually have a lot of like psychic like movie like visuals that I get like that come through. So it's like when I see something that is like no longer serving, like even when this is mainly like even for myself, right? Like this is the visual that I get, right? I see it as like, you know, like when the boat was like cracking and like all those like cords are like slowly breaking and then eventually it breaks. That's sometimes how I see something psychically when I see it coming to an end, right? It's like breaking, and it officially breaks, like it breaks off because you're not a vibrational match to that thing anymore, is really what that is. Maybe there was something that you learned in your life, maybe there's something that you changed in your routine, like whatever it is, right? Like you're not a match with it anymore, right? Like it broke, you know? I hope that makes sense. That's how I psychically see it. No, ego is definitely not a bad thing. You said your life has been miserable because you don't listen to your ego and you never learned to be demanding. Yes, so here's the thing with the ego. Like you want to develop a healthy ego is really what that is, right? Like you want to have boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, okay, the way that I've compartmentalized the ego is it is your masculine energy within, right? It's your solar plexus chakra. So you have the shadow ego, which is like, you know, again, doing things for ego-driven reasons. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's something that somebody else wants of you. Like this is just how I've compartmentalized the energy, right? But then there's also the healthy ego where it's like having boundaries, being persistent, getting things that you want or like you feel like you deserve. Do you know what I mean? But in like a healthy way, right? Like the shadow aspect or like the shadow masculine version of this is like, again, that energy that I was saying earlier, like do it at all costs, you know? And it's like sometimes like that energy is like really gonna penetrate over people or like trample over people. And it's like there's a different way of doing things. Like you'll still get to your goals, you know what I mean? So it depends like what aspect of it you go into. But it's interesting you mentioned that because I had someone pop up on my feed, and maybe this is going to resonate more so for people who are operating out of the feminine energy. And keep in mind, we all have masculine and feminine energies within us, but they were basically saying how a lot of spirituality is like talking about like releasing the ego and not having an ego, right? But it's like some people need to develop an ego in this lifetime. Do you know what I mean? Like a healthy ego is what that is. Like you don't want to be in a space of not doing anything. And at the end of the day, it's a material plane. That's the bottom line is we are on a material plane, right? So like when you look at people who are super in their crown or super spiritual, like they're kind of off in the ethers. You know what I mean? Like if they, again, it depends on their financial situation. Because a lot of the time when people go into the crown, they're not in the root, right? So you'll see sometimes people, like let's say they make a lot of money, then they have the ability to go into their crown and that's great, right? But sometimes people go into their crown completely and they're like, I don't want to participate in society. And this happens for 12 house people as well. And they're like, I don't want to participate in society at all, right? Well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Like I'm just throwing that out there. Exactly. Healthy ego, healthy life. Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm glad that resonates. No, yeah, no need to feel guilty. Exactly. Like, this is what I mean. So you'll see like a lot of the time, it depends on the person, right? Like, and it depends on what's happening within the person. Like sometimes something happens like that and like, it'll trigger people into having like a reaction, and you never want to have a reaction, right? Like you never want to have an immediate reaction to anything. You need to give it time, especially if it's something that's like a shock. Do you know what I mean? Or it's something that it could be in any realm of life is really what that is, right? So keep this in mind, because if you give yourself the time and the space to like buffer, then you can like come at it from like a different perspective and it's like level-headed, and then you're like, okay, this is how I'm gonna handle this. And a lot of the time what happens with people is like, I find that a lot of things, and this is back to the ego thing, right? So a lot of the time, like let's say you get triggered, right? What happens is like when you get triggered, if you have a reaction, you've quote unquote given your power away. So this is connecting to the ego and the solar plexus chakra as well, okay? So you've given your power away because you've reacted. Let's say you've lashed out at someone, or let's say you did something, or just like you had some kind of reaction, like whatever. It could be anything in any sort of circumstance when you get triggered, right? As soon as you react, you're giving your power away to that situation, to that person, to whatever it is, right? And then you might feel bad because you've given your power away, and you might do another thing, and then you might do another thing. So that's kind of how people, you know, dig themselves into like this shadow ego hole, right? Because it's like a lot of giving your power away. So like bringing the power back to yourself and giving it time, you know, being like, okay, you know, it is what it is. Okay, how are we going to proceed? Give it a few days, take the break, rest, and go from there. Let's see what else are you guys saying in here. You're welcome. I'm so glad that resonated. I don't know what I was saying up there, but I'm glad that it resonated. You said that would be a good profession. Oh yes, we did that one. You have you have Venus and Mercury conjunct in the second house. Your Sagittarius ascendant And then, okay, I don't do sidereal astrology, so I wouldn't be able to tell you about that. But Venus conjunct Mercury in the second house for your relationships, like a mental connection, is going to be super, super important. Moon, Venus, Jupiter, and Taurus in the 10th house. What can I tell you? It's all about the public life. A lot of the time when I see a 10th house stellium, so since you're saying this is tying back to what I was saying earlier as well, when I see a 10th house stellium, a lot of the time these people tend to become very well known in their niche. So like, let's say you're an engineer, for example, because it is in Taurus, maybe it's like you have a business, or maybe you're in the corporate world, or maybe you're working towards something. Like you can become like a public person in that area as well. Like for example, what's her name? The girl who did the lawyer who did the Johnny Depp case, Camille was her name? Like, I can't remember her chart, but I feel like she had Capricorn or like 10th house, something like that. So for example, like something like this, you become like a very well-known lawyer in your field, right? Or like a very well-known engineer, or it could go to the international point, but it depends on the rest of the natal chart with the 10th house stellium, but it's public, right? It's this public life, like you're climbing towards something, you're trying to get into those higher echelons of society, you're trying to get the money, you're trying to get the gains, like that's kind of how the energy works. You said not participate in the world. So true. You're on your sabbatical from the world. Yeah, sometimes, I don't know what to say. Sometimes you need that. That's the thing with 12th house. You know, sometimes the 12th house needs the isolation because they've absorbed too much, you know? And again, this comes down to everything. That's another theme of this live today, right? Like it's about balance at the end of the day with everything. You know what I mean? But it's like sometimes 12th house people can go so far into their crown. Like I am willing to bet, okay? I'm willing to bet. Obviously, this is something that we would have to do studies on, okay? And like get a lot of natal charts and look at, but I'm willing to bet a lot of homeless people have a lot of 12th house energy in their natal chart, okay? Now, obviously, there's a lot of components here. There's also trauma that we would have to look at. We would have to look at the addiction aspects of things. Yes, all of that, right? But if you look at, like, let's say individuals who decide no longer to participate in society, I'm convinced that they have a lot of 12th house energy in their natal chart, right? Because they see through the veil, okay? It makes sense. And they're like, I don't want to participate in this anymore. Do you know what I mean? And whatever, like different people obviously have the free will to do what you want, is what that is. But it's like, if you look at this world like a game, you know, and it's a game, it's like when you enter the game, right, of this plane, which is astrology is showing you this, right? Like there's a certain energy on this earth plane. It's a game that you've entered. You can either play it or choose not to play it. And sometimes 12th house people are like, I just don't want to play the game. But it's like you've still entered this realm. I hope that makes sense. So it's like there's still something here that needs to be mastered. So that's why sometimes I think to myself, and I think these are just, again, theories and like ideas. I think to myself sometimes, and I'm like, I feel like 12th house people sometimes are meant to master the physical plane, is what that is. Like sometimes the karma for them is to be here. You know what I mean? Like in this, whatever this is, you know what I mean? And it could be a struggle, right? Because they're more, again, crown chakra, creative, empathetic, but they're also healers at the same time, you know? So you said, but isn't trauma apparent in a certain person's chart? Absolutely. You said, it's like our life story is written by us before we're born. Yeah, so it's interesting. I was just listening to a song today. I don't know if any of you guys are Queen fans, but I'm a huge Queen fan, okay? So I was listening to the song, Who Wants to Live Forever? And he has this line in it, and he's like, he basically says, it's all decided for us kind of thing, right? I can't remember. There's something else that he says. Yes, there's something else that he says before he says that, but then he says it's all decided for us. And that kind of ties into the whole free will versus not having free will thing, right? And that ties into, is astrology good? Okay, so it's deep. Okay, this is deep to think about, right? But if you look at it from that way, and a lot of like religious scriptures, it's interesting to see this, because in a lot of religions, they're also going to say the same thing, like it's already decided. Some of them are going to be like, God already wrote it, it's written, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, right? But my question is this a good thing? Right? Because you will see that in people's natal charts, that it's already there, right? You're coded, okay? In terms of astrology, you're coded with this. It's coded in your natal charts. So I don't know. I'm going to leave that with you guys. Hey, interconnecting authentically. I'm doing well. How are you? One of you guys asked how to know your life purpose with astrology. If you go back to at some point in this live earlier, I went on a whole tangent about that. Basically, you want to look at your whole natal chart. You want to see, do you have stelliums? What are the houses? What's going on with the houses? What's your north node? Like you have to look at everything to see what your overall life purpose is. Sometimes your Saturn is going to tell you. Sometimes your Pluto is going to tell you. Sometimes what you struggle in is part of your life purpose. So you have to look at everything is really what it is. It's hard to say with just one placement. Yay, I'm so glad that that resonated. I'm seeing your comments down here below. I don't remember what I was saying at that point, but I'm very happy that it resonated. You said, how do I feel about a south node in 7th synastry? South node in the 7th. Okay, anytime you have south node synastries, it's past life connections. Maybe you're resolving something, clearing something. You're welcome. Scorpio rising, Pluto in the 12th, Virgo, Sun, Aquarian moon. Is there anything I can intuitively pick up on? Super psychically inclined. Okay, and it's interesting because your name is Esther Ethereal. So literally you are ethereal. Scorpio rising is like people love you or hate you. Like there's no in between, but it's like Scorpio energy is a mirror, right? So that's what they're here to do. They're here to mirror back to people who they actually are, which is interesting. So if the person doesn't like you, that means they don't like themselves. But that's for everything in life, you know? If the person really likes you, maybe there's a trait within you that the person really likes. But also sometimes if the person's a little bit too obsessive, then they want to be you, and that could also potentially be a dangerous person, okay? So there's this. So sometimes you might have to have boundaries with people, right? Where it's like, okay, you're like coming on a little too strong. I'm going to put you over here energetically in this category. Will be nice, right? But you can't come in too close because then it'll turn like the roommate movie. You know what I mean? If you guys catch my drift. So that's Scorpio rising, okay? Magnetic, people love you. Pluto in the 12th, like that's a lot of unconscious things that you're clearing, okay? In this lifetime, purging, right? Unconscious things. It's kind of like that Scorpio in the 12th house energy. I was talking about that earlier in this live as well. Scorpio in the 12th house. It's a lot of like shadows, shadow traits. And a lot of the time your unconscious is carried over also from a past life, right? So if you have fears, maybe you have a lot of irrational fears that have nothing to do with this lifetime. So here's the thing too, okay? So if you guys can't find the answer to something in this lifetime, that's only when you're going to look at the past life. So you want to look at it, is it in this lifetime? Is it in the ancestral line? And then you can be like, okay, it's in a past life. So like, let's say you have like an irrational fear of water or swimming. Well, maybe nothing happened in this lifetime that you can remember, right? So you have to do your investigative research, ask your parents when you were a kid, is there something that happened that I have this irrational fear of water or swimming, that maybe in a past life you were taken out by drowning, for example, God forbid, but for example, right? Like let's say it's this. So it could be this, right? So that's kind of like that 12th house Scorpio energy. Like there could be a lot of shadowy things, a lot of shadowy traits, maybe possessiveness, jealousy, like these types of things, okay, taking place. So keep this in mind, okay? Aquarian moon, ahead of your time, detached, which is interesting in combination with that Scorpio rising, right? It's interesting, like Scorpio is an interesting energy because it's like they also want to have their freedom in a way. Like they also want to have this like detachment, like, you know, independence to do their own thing, but then they also are soul merging at the same time. So it's about learning yourself and seeing how can you work with the energies is really, really what that is. But Aquarius moon, like, interestingly enough, I actually put it out on TikTok a while back now. I was wondering if people who have either an Aquarius moon or 4th house in Aquarius, if they moved around a lot, okay? Because a lot of the time these people have an unconventional upbringing, or because it's the moon, it could be the mother. Maybe the mother is unconventional, a little different, a little eccentric, a little quirky, like a little bit out of the box, right? With the Aquarian moon, you yourself could want to move around. You could, like, in terms of your home, like you could kind of feel suffocated if you live in one place for too long, for example, or maybe you're going to be the type of person who has like a vacation home and you live there for 6 months and you live here for 6 months. Like that's an Aquarius moon, okay? If it's none of this, well, in that case, maybe like the way your home looks is different, or maybe you switch it up a lot, for example. You said you relate a lot with that you have Scorpio, Sun, Aquarius, Moon, and Sag rising. Yes. Interesting. Irrational fear of moths. I wonder what that could be. Honestly, this is going to sound so random. Oh my gosh. I don't know. This is just the first thing that I psychically saw, but I'm wondering, okay, this is really dark. Okay. But I'm wondering if something happened where, cause I'm seeing like, it took me into a closet and then it took me into you being stuck in a closet in a past life. So I don't know if that's something that took place, but that's where I went to with your question. So maybe. For newbies like you, they should use one free online natal chart software. You've had different, yes, results. Use a Canadian band, Bare Naked Ladies. It's been done before. Let's see. The way how you have 12 house influences and you work with those, experience homelessness. And yes, see, there it is, because you're probably, so here's the thing to understand, okay? I hope I'm not like, I don't know, for people who make it like this deep into the live, like you guys are in the crown. Do you know what I mean? So I'm taking you guys into the crown, okay? So a lot of the time, things that we're doing, we're probably, well, not probably, we are resolving something within ourselves. So it's either like an unexpressed desire in a past life, or you're trying to learn something about yourself, heal something about yourself through that thing, or like basically express it, if that makes sense. So 12 house people, like maybe sometimes like in a past life, you could have been homeless, for example, right? So you're going to be super empathetic toward homeless people, right? Because you've probably had that experience as well, right? So I can see that taking place sometimes with 12 house people as well. Maybe they've experienced this in a past life, or like even addiction or whatever it is, right? So that's what's happening. It's like, if you have a connection to something, like a lot of the time, if you look at it as karmic clearance, and you'll know, like while you're in it and you're deep in it and you're loving it, like you're still clearing the karma, right? But you'll know when it's done, right? Sometimes you wake up and it's like a switch and you're like, okay, like we're done here and I'm gonna move on to the next thing. That's how you know the karma's been cleared. It's just like an energetic balance. That's kind of how karma works. Like people think karma is negative, right? Because we hear karmic relationships and then we hear like, hope that person gets their karma. It's just a balance. It's a balancing of energies, right? Is what that is. And a lot of the time 12 house people have had a lot of lifetimes, right? Like you've kind of like through the, I'm seeing it as like a washing machine, right? Like recycled is really what that is, like so many times. You said, haha, stuck in the closet could be a thing. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of it that way. Oh my gosh, see? So this is interesting because someone recently, I was saying this at the beginning of the live, someone recently said that clairaudience could be through speech. And I'm like, I have that because I remember when I was even younger with my friends, I had a friend. And this is like, so I was always intuitive and psychic, but I had a friend that was like jokingly like to our other friends, and she was like, oh, like I always worry when things roll off of Barbara's tongue because it's like they always end up happening because like I talk, like that's also how I get my information is through talking, right? Because in a way, me talking puts me into a meditative state, so it's interesting that that came through. You said, can you see homosexuality in a natal chart? Yes, but here's the thing too, like, okay, here's the thing too. I don't know. I think everyone's a little bit gay, okay? Because it's like, it's a fluidity thing. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, it's like a whole conversation because it's like, you can be homosexual, but then you might not necessarily be like homoromantic, right? For example, or whatever the term is. Maybe I'm not using the correct term, right? Because it's like, if you look at sexuality as like you just getting a pleasure from a person, like you can do that from any person, right? Like any gender, right? There's that aspect of it. But like, could you be romantically involved with that person? So there's so many things to look for. Do you know what I mean? Because we'd have to define it. Like, what is it really? Do you know what I mean? And when I look at the younger generations, like Gen Z and younger, like they're all fluid. Is really what that is. Like they're all energetically fluid because their energies are fluid within as well, right? Because it comes back down to energy, right? Like when I look at sexuality overall, like if you have a sexual attraction to someone, right? It could be a few things, right? Sometimes if you have this deep attraction to someone, it could be like a trauma response, right? Like if it's like that instant like intensity, right? Like it could be this. But sometimes if you have a huge attraction to someone, there's something in that person's energetic field that you find attractive that is missing in yours, right? That's the way that I see it. So it's like sometimes through this exchange, you guys exchange energies. Maybe they have something, you know, they see something in you that's missing in their field, and then you guys exchange the energy and the energy balances, for example, right? So you can look at it this way as well. So it's like when you look at it from that perspective, that can be in anybody. Do you know what I mean? Like I think we see like these things again, because it's again, the theme of the live, like things have been very like rigid up until this point, right? But if you take off the rigidity aspect of things and you look at people as energy, you will see that people have both energies within them. So it's hard to say, like, I know people have said like, this could be a homosexuality indicator in a natal chart, and you'll see that bisexuality, homosexuality, like you could see it in a natal chart. Like for example, I'm trying to think, like sometimes like the air Venuses, for example, Gemini Venus, for example, Uranus Venus aspects, okay? I've seen a lot of polyamorous people have Uranus Venus aspects, or even Venus and Aquarius, but it depends on the rest of the natal chart, because I met someone who had Venus and Aquarius, which would be unconventional relationships, but then it was conjuncting their Saturn, and that is long-term relationships. So you have to look at everything. Do you know what I mean? You really have to look at everything. So it's this. You said, wow, your fear of moss and love for abandoned buildings has you thinking, yeah, maybe there's something that's taking place. Like maybe you were going, okay, this is really interesting. Okay. Maybe you were going on like an expedition. I'm actually seeing, okay, do you guys know what catacombs are? I'm seeing like you may be going and like researching them or going underground or something. Like I'm seeing you kind of like going on an expedition and like getting stuck or something. Like maybe that's something that happened in a past life, because I'm literally seeing like catacombs, like you going under, right? Or like discovering something secret and under. I'm curious to know about your chart. Like, do you have scorpionic energy taking place in there as well? Let's see. Oh my gosh, said a huge fan. Yay. I think that was about Queen. What do I think about ancestors trying to connect with you? Do you think we're born with a connection with your birth chart, and why one member in particular? Yeah, you'll see that. You'll see that, absolutely. Sometimes, let's say Scorpio moons can be raised by a grandparent. Sometimes Saturn in the 4th house can be raised by a grandparent, for example, and like they can play a huge influence in your life as well. And it's interesting. I talk about ancestors way at the beginning of this live. I love, see, this is what I mean by frequency. Like everyone is on the same vibe. So it's like the questions are like similar but different. Some of them are already answered. You guys are asking like similar questions. So if you go way back to the beginning, I talked more about ancestors then, and like how that could work in terms of like your energy field. But yes, so in terms of like the connection to them, like, You can see that in a natal chart, absolutely. Like you can see like who you might be more connected to. Like you can see everything. Honestly, you can see everything in a natal chart. Like astrologers, like some of them are learning astrology for their whole lives. Like that's what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just so much to learn. And that's why I love it, because I love learning and there's always something new that I'm learning. And then like different people discover different things because it's like patterns. There's so much going on in there. And I think there's even more. Do you know what I mean? Like I think you can learn a certain amount, like with all the resources that are available, but I think there's even more information because everyone has used astrology. Like it's the most ancient science, okay? Or art, like whatever term you want to use, but like all the ancient civilizations have used it. So the question is like, why have they all used it? Like what do they know that we didn't know? Do you know what I mean? And especially now, in the times that we're living in, like energetically, like we've been very like energetically in a way dumbed down, okay? If you think about it as a collective is really, really what that is. So we're rediscovering all these things. So let's see. How does promiscuity affect the soul? You worry about this. Okay, that is a good question. So here's the thing, okay? You're asking about promiscuity and how does that affect the soul. So it's interesting because it's like, okay, I think everything comes down to the energy behind something and the vibration and the intention. If you're doing something mindlessly, it could be going into the addiction type of energy, for example, or you're trying to numb something, or you're trying to avoid something. Do you know what I mean? It could be an escapism. So it's like where, like what is stemming this is really what that is. Like, where is it coming from, right? Like, where is this energy coming from? Because it's like, if you look at sexual energy overall, first of all, it's the most powerful energy. And second of all, like it literally brings through souls. Okay. So that's how powerful sexual energy is. So it's like with sexual energy being that powerful, like the question is what else could you bring through? Right. So it's like sometimes there is the energetic exchange, what I was mentioning in this live, like a little bit earlier, where it's like you have the attraction and it's like there needs to be an energy exchange maybe between two people, right? There's that aspect of it. Absolutely. But if it's going into like you just mindlessly doing this, you're depleting your actual life force energy is the way that I see it. Because your sexual energy is actually in a way your life force energy, right? Because it's your creative energy, it's your manifestation energy. So it's like, and this can be in any realm. Like let's say you're someone who does it with yourself a lot, right? I'm going to try to speak between the lines here. Okay. It's like, again, even if you're doing it a lot by yourself, it's like, are you doing it in an addictive type of way? Is it like a numbing type of thing? Is it like why is it like, why do you need to do it all the time? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it depends. Like what is the energy behind what you're doing? It's hard to say, right? That's what it all comes down to is like, why are you doing what you're doing? And what is the energy behind it? What is the intention behind it? Like, why are you going into this energy is really what that is, right? But it's like, even if it's with yourself and you're just like constantly doing that, well, in that case, it could be in an addictive energy. And again, you're depleting yourself of your life force energy. So like, let's say you're someone who has a lot of sexual energy, and it's so interesting. Every time I do these lives, we talk about things that I was like thinking about or like explaining to people. Like when I think like in my mind about things, I'm like usually explaining to people certain concepts, right? So what I was thinking about earlier was like someone who has a lot of sexual energy, right? Like the energy needs an outlet, of course. So it's like when you're unaware and maybe you don't have like a goal or you don't have like an ambition in mind, because like the highest form of this is to put your sexual energy toward the goal, toward the ambition, toward creating something, right? Because the thing is that I heard this from someone else and I loved it so much. Basically what they were saying was like, when you're born, right, and you're going to see this in a person's natal chart, if you're born with a lot of sexual energy, right, like you have this abundance of sexual energy because you're meant to be creating something, okay, down here on this earth plane. Like everyone has the life force energy, absolutely, but let's say like it's a lot, right, of sexual energy. It's like a lot of creative energy and a lot of creative force, right, that you have within you. So when you're younger and maybe you're unaware, you could be kind of like not knowing what to do with this energy. So it could just be going through a bunch of different people, right? And it's like, not only are you depleting yourself, but you're also taking on a lot of other energies as well. So there's that aspect of it as well, right? You take on the other person's energy as well. And what I was saying earlier, sometimes you have to have the balance, right? Sometimes, but it's like, again, if the energy behind it is like mindless or you're numbing something or you're not in tune with your emotions or just like for pleasure, or just like because you're bored, sometimes it's you're bored. Like it depends, like what is the emotion behind it? What is the energy behind it? Like, why are you going into this energy is really what that is, right? Because an excess amount of anything, like hedonism in any way, again, like even if it's like addiction of any sort, even if it's like you're eating chocolate all the time or eating sugar all the time, like why? There's something that is rooting that, right, within you. And I've noticed that when you go into addictive patterns, you're actually opening yourself up, okay, energetically, and an entity hooks into you at that point, and then it's pushing you to do it more, right? Because then at that point, so this is the shadow aspect of the sexual energy. So the sexual energy, if it doesn't have the outlet to go out, you're destructing within, right? Or you can become aggressive or violent or whatever it is, right? Because it's like it doesn't have an outlet. So most of the time, if you have a lot of sexual energy, creativity, focusing on something that's like your goal, exercise is going to be really good for people who have a lot of sexual energy as well. So that's really what it all comes down to, is really, really what that is. So it depends like what's happening energetically behind the actual action. Thank you, Edward. You said, how did I get to astrology? You love my explanations. Yeah, so I actually have a video on my YouTube channel. I think it might be under my entrepreneurship playlist or maybe miscellaneous astrology. I don't know, but it's called How Did I Get Into Astrology? Okay, because I'm not gonna go into like the whole dissertation here. It's like a 20-minute video, I think, or 15 or whatever. But yeah, so basically it was like one thing that led me to the next, and like the short bullet form version is like, I saw like, because the thing is I'm a Libra sun, right? So I'm a Libra sun, and it was interesting because when I was younger and like maybe 16, 17, because that's when I started working, like my work friends would always be like, well, you don't act like a Libra, or like they had other Libra friends in their life or whatever, and they would be like, this Libra act like this or like this, and you're not like a Libra. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I didn't think too much of it, but then I discovered my moon sign, okay? And when I discovered that, my whole life made sense. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is all of this, right? So then I started learning more and more and more. And then I started learning about other people and their natal charts. And there's just so much to learn, okay? It's literally awesome because you learn so much. And now, literally every time I meet a person, I'm already thinking in my mind, like what's going on with their energy field. I can sometimes now like guess actually like what's going on with them. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like their astrology chart. Is really what that is. Like I can really feel into energies, right? Because I'm clairsentient. So when I'm doing like learning or whatever, like doing astrology or like talking about it, like I'm feeling into the energy. Like what does Mars and Aries feel like? Like how does that feel within a person? And it's interesting because I think maybe it was the Mars and Aries video. One of these videos, like sometimes when I'm like talking, right? So that's what I was saying earlier about like channeling through speech. So sometimes when I'm talking and I'm talking about a certain thing and I'm feeling into the energy, then I see a visual and I'm like, okay, like this feels like this type of public figure. And then I look at their chart and I'm like, oh my gosh, they have that placement, right? So I don't know. I just like, you create like an energetic repertoire within you is really, really what that is. And then, yeah, every person becomes like, what's the word? Like market research. Astrology is awesome. Okay, let me just go back up and see if I miss anything from you guys up here. What does it mean when houses are empty in your chart, like your 12th house? You can look at it as like you mastered that already in a past life, where it's like it's not an energetic focus for you. You're still gonna have a sign in there though, so the sign is still gonna have a meaning. Okay, so you're still gonna have a sign occupying your 12th house, but okay, if it's empty or you have empty houses, you're not focusing on that in this lifetime, okay? So an empty 12th house, like in this lifetime, like you're not going too much into your ground, for example, like not too much into the metaphysical. Maybe you're focusing more on like the earthly things in this lifetime, for example, like things like this. Oh, that's great. Somebody answered your question as well. That's awesome. Okay, what does it mean when you have sun in the 10th house in opposition with your moon in the 4th? So the mother, 4-house moon, and the father could have been different, okay? They could have had different opinions, which then in turn within you could have like this internal conflict, right? Sun is your masculine energy, moon is your feminine, right? So for example, like maybe your sun in the 10th wants to express and be out there. Maybe the moon in the 4th has like an unresolved emotional world that it needs to figure out, okay? Maybe there's a mother wound, maybe there's codependency, all these types of things. So just keep this in mind, okay? Because basically it's kind of pulling you in two different directions. Yes. Yeah, concern. I'm not gonna mention that person's name, but yeah, all those people are like high level in the occult, okay? Is really what that is. They're up there, like they know a lot, because I feel like a lot of these people, like we know about like secret groups and so on and so forth, but I feel like, you know, when someone joins these groups, they actually learn what this plane is about and how to operate it, is what that is. Okay, so astrology is kind of like the beginner keys, right? But I feel like when people enter these groups, they learn even more, okay? They learn even more about like the secrets of the plane and so on and so forth, and how it operates and how it actually works. And you'll see that also. You'll see that also in like musicians' songs, right? Because they always tell you, right? You'll see that in their songs because they're actually telling you. Like there's another Queen song, because I was listening to Queen today, okay? So that's kind of like what's on my mind. But there's another Queen song, I think it was Under Pressure, and he says, there's a terror of knowing what this world is about. We've got some good friends screaming, let me out, or something like that. And I was just like, it's so facts. You know what I mean? So it's this. You're welcome. What does it feel like when you're taking on other people's energy? So the only time you'll know is when you know your energy, right? So it's interesting because it's like, if you know your energy, you're not really going to take on other people's, if that makes sense, okay? So you'll only take it on when you don't have a sense of self, right? Because you don't have energetic boundaries when you know yourself and like you can see the discrepancy or like the difference between the two energies, you're not really going to be taking it on. But if you're taking it on, well, in that case, like you'll know because it's like maybe start to take on their mannerisms. Like, have you guys ever seen couples, for example, like they were two different people? Let's say you knew them before they started dating, right? They were two different people and whatever, like they were dating for a long period of time. They literally take on the same mannerisms. They speak the same way. Like now someone can be like, oh, maybe that's because they spend so much time together, but it's like literally the energy is merging, right? The energy is literally merging. So it's like, that's how you'll know you've taken on someone's energy. So it's like, that's why you have to have a strong sense of self is really what that is. And that's the biggest blessing in this world is to really, truly know who you are because then you can put up the energetic boundaries and continue being yourself, right? So a lot of this like merging falls into codependency, which is something that's being healed and cleared within the collective. You've heard that female is magnetic like the moon and male is electric like the sun. You said we're all a mix, absolutely. So does that mean females will be significantly more so sensitive to promiscuity? I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it depends on the energy within the person. It depends on the energy within the person because it's like, when you look at someone's chart and let's say they're more water, right? Like I think people who have more water placements are overall more sensitive to taking on other people's energies. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it matters when it comes to like genders specifically. Like I think it's more so the energy in your chart because it's like you can have a male who is more water energy dominant and he's more femme. Do you know what I mean? Like more in his feminine energy. Like you'll feel that within people. Now whether he expresses it or suppresses it, like depends like on what range of like deconstructing like the negative views towards feminine energy he is at, right? And what generation he's a part of, right? But it's like, I think everyone is sensitive. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think everyone is sensitive to energy to a certain extent. It's just more so water energy. Water houses are more prone to absorbing the energy of the other person. Do you know what I mean? So I really don't think that it matters on like, you know, the gender and these types of things. It just so happens that up until this point, let's say women were more feminine energy dominant, but it's like, were they more feminine energy dominant or it's like, were they just able to express the feminine energy more? Do you know what I mean? And like the feminine energy, let's say within men, like if you look at like the water charts, right? Like up until this point, right? And it's like, you know, men with like water placements, for example, like maybe they were sensitive too, but maybe they weren't aware. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe they weren't able to express it, or like maybe they thought it was a certain like negative thing to express the aspect of themselves. So it's hard to say. It really, really is hard to say because here's the thing, okay? With these like male, female debates, right? Always look at like, let's say like gay men, right? Okay, so like look at gay men as well, right? So that's like, look at like how are they absorbing the energy, right? So it's like we're all energy at the end of the day, right? So that's the whole thing here to understand. Okay, let's see. How can you have a lot of Plutonian energy? So if you have a lot of Plutonian energy in your natal chart, okay, there's two of you guys asking about Plutonian energy. How do you define a Plutonian? Does it have to have any planet in Scorpio? Plutonian people are like, you have a lot of Pluto or you have a lot of Scorpio energy and you have Pluto aspects as well, okay? That's gonna be a Plutonian person as well. So if you have a lot of Plutonian energy, you're here to transform. You transform and then through that, right, you're transforming others as well. That's kind of how it works, okay? That's the whole thing with Pluto. It's like you're here to transform, like you're destructing, right? And sometimes you don't have to do anything. Sometimes it's your vibe. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's like you being aloof in your world. Like I was thinking about this actually recently because I met someone who was like a Scorpio, right? And I was thinking, and it was so funny because it's like this person, like it's interesting to observe people, right? Because this person was like a Scorpio and I think they had a Sag rising, right? And it's like, I was just observing people and like, there was a lot of people there or whatever. And this person and the Scorpio energy kind of seems aloof, right? That's the Scorpio energy. Like Scorpio seemed aloof, right? Then out of some corner, they jump in and they say the funniest thing ever. Well, that's the Sag rising as well, right? But it's like, what I mean is like, you know, sometimes this person who seems aloof, right? You think they're not paying attention. They're in their own world. They're doing their own thing, right? Because Scorpio goes off into the ethers, maybe like just like within themselves, right? Like it's an introverted sign. You think they're not paying attention. You think they're not noticing, but maybe they could be noticing everything, for example, right? And then for example, right? And then for example, let's say there's someone around that gets triggered at you not paying attention to them. Well, now you're triggering them. Do you know what I mean? So now you're making that person go inward. So that's how the energy works. You don't really have to do much. Okay, it's just who you are as a person is really, really what that is, okay? And then you said, do you know how difficult transformation is? Yes, it's so difficult. That's why most people don't do it. But what I will say to you guys is it is so worth it, okay? It's so worth it to be on the other side of things. It's intense, Okay, it's intense, it's a lot, and when you're in it, you're like, what is going on? But it's so worth it to be on the other side of things, because at that point, you just get to the unbothered energy is really what it is. You're in your power, you're doing your own thing, you're going about your own like business, you're not like enmeshing too much with other people and like their opinions and all these types of things. That's awesome, okay? So it's worth it to do the work. It's intense, but the other side is definitely rewarding, okay? And with that, you guys, I'm gonna sign off. Thank you so much for your questions, your comments, your likes, your shares, your subscribes. Thank you for being a part of this channel and this live. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your evening.